So you should be seeing my SharePoint Backup Console. You switch over to the Farm Backup and Restore tab in the bottom left here. So in our first session, we talked about the component architecture of the tool, where all the pieces live. In our second session, we did a quick installation. We talked very broadly about backup strategy and what components we're backing up and where we're putting them to. Today we're going to focus on recovery, and we're going to talk about how to get stuff back, essentially. So there's two main scopes from which this tool operates, and it's this farm backup and recovery scope, and then this granular restore scope. Give me just 1 second. Let me just make sure my writer is in. Nope, he's been switched over. What I'm doing here, for those of you that are interested, I have the account that my SharePoint VSS writer is assigned didn't have permissions to give me the metadata information I need. Now you'll notice over here in the backup console, this is a total aside by the way, I don't see any information here about my topology. It's because the guy we requested it from, this SharePoint VSS writer, didn't have permission to give it to me. So I'm changing that account. Giving that guy a start. And now when I refresh over here, you should see what I mean. I think I have a policy on this VM that switches that account for some reason. Need to fix that. But yeah, so at the highest level, farm backup restore. So component restore is pretty straightforward, right? We're backing up at the highest level database components in regards to content. And then these other, here, let me just show you. So if I go to my backup tab, I'm going to see a breakdown of the different components that we've backed up, that we had the ability to back up. Things like the search indexes, things like the .NET framework configuration, the certificate store. All these get compressed down into proprietary format and stored in the file system. But then more importantly, we have this data content. So SQL, the SharePoint config database, all my content databases, including the SharePoint admin content database, all my search, crawl store, links database, etc. And then obviously all my service application databases. So for obvious reasons, this is the bread and butter of SharePoint. So this is the really important bits, right? These are important too, don't get me wrong, but this is your content, right? So at the farm level, a restore means literally put that database back where it came from. So let's say a content database in the environment was compromised or corrupted or lost or deleted, whatever the case may be. I can come back into this backup set, and as long as my farm is up and running and my SharePoint backup installation is set up and good to go, I can just click the database, hit restore in place, and it's literally going to be essentially a SQL Server database restore, right? And it's just going to put that database right back where it came from. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's pretty straightforward. The only thing I will touch on is the difference then between this in-place and out-of-place concept. So with the farm component backup and restore section, when we say an out-of-place restore, because there's really no way to do, at this point in time anyway, a so-called bare metal restore of, take a backup set and turn it into a farm somewhere, right? It's just not currently possible. Now, if you have an existing farm, it's certainly possible to, transfer those backup sets over to the other environment and then restore them in place to that environment. Assuming you've got a farm set up and you've got a SharePoint backup installation configured for that farm, definitely do that. Obviously, there's, the expected considerations regarding dependencies and the like. But, long story short, in place is where it's at. Out of place, what it really does is it gives us access to the data, but really what we're doing with this operation is we're decompressing the contents of the backup set that we choose. For instance, if I've got all my content databases listed in this backup set and I do an out-of-place restore, what it's really doing is opening up those compressed proprietary files and dumping them to the location I specify. Right? So I'm not going to go through the actual motions, but this is essentially what's happening. I'm changing, let me just show it to you in the file system. Changing, let's see, changing something like an mdf.pb compressed file to the actual data files in a location that I specify. And that actually might come into play in your granular restore strategy too. So this is an important thing to note. So out-of-place restore, what it does is it gives us access to the content within our backup set to use outside of our tool, right? So in the instance that we need to rebuild a farm from scratch, well, we can't necessarily do that bare metal restore from the tool, but we definitely have access to the content from in our backup set. We can decompress it, take it where we need to go, and use that stuff to build a new farm from scratch, right? That's kind of farm backup and restore in a nutshell. Again, in place is what you're looking for to do programmatic restoration within the tool. Out of place will give you access to the information within the backup set to use at your discretion elsewhere to build a farm.